Charlie Kirk was born on October 14, 1993, in the quiet suburbs of Chicago, Illinois. From the very start, there was a subtle curiosity in him, a quiet attentiveness to the world around him that set him apart from other children. He had a gentle way of observing things, watching people speak, noticing patterns in their words, and quietly cataloging the small details of life. Even in his earliest memories, he seemed to carry a mind always wandering, exploring ideas far beyond the boundaries of the backyard or classroom. His family's home was modest but filled with warmth and encouragement. Charlie's parents nurtured his curiosity, offering him books, engaging him in conversation, and allowing him to explore his thoughts without pressure. There were days when he would sit for hours reading history books or listening to public debates, completely absorbed in the cadence of ideas being shared. His parents encouraged questions, reminding him that asking, "Why?" was sometimes more important than knowing the answer. It was in this environment that Charlie began to develop his early sense of inquiry, learning to value reasoned thought over superficial judgments. Even as a young boy, Charlie's fascination with leadership and influence began to show. He noticed the ways adults shaped their communities and sparked change, and he longed to understand it for himself. It wasn't about fame or recognition, it was about seeing ideas take root in the real world. Whether through school projects or small volunteering efforts, he slowly began to understand that action gave life to thought. He learned the rhythm of community, listening, contributing, and observing how different perspectives came together. By the time he reached elementary school, Charlie had already developed a quiet sense of purpose. While other children focused on games or cartoons, he gravitated toward books and discussions about history, government, and society. These interests were not forced upon him. They came naturally, like a gentle pull toward the larger questions of life. He delighted in stories of individuals who made a difference through ideas, whether in politics, philosophy, or social movements. And in these stories, he began to imagine himself as someone who might, one day, influence the world in his own measured way. High school brought new experiences, and with them, new challenges. Adolescence, as it often does, introduced social pressures and the occasional feeling of being out of step with the crowd. Yet Charlie found solace in his intellectual pursuits. He joined debate clubs, participated in student organizations, and sought out mentors who could help him refine his ideas. Debate, in particular, was a space where he thrived. He learned to listen carefully, to respond thoughtfully, and to value clarity over volume. It was less about winning and more about understanding, and this approach shaped much of his early personality. During these years, Charlie also began to understand the importance of community involvement. He participated in local programs, sometimes leading small projects, other times quietly contributing behind the scenes. Each effort, no matter how minor, taught him lessons about collaboration, persistence, and the subtle influence of dedicated effort. He noticed how even a small idea, when nurtured patiently, could ripple outward and touch others in unexpected ways. One of the most formative experiences of his high school years was the discovery of his voice in public discourse. While some teens found themselves silenced or overlooked, Charlie learned to speak with a calm confidence. He realized that persuasion was not about volume or force, but about presenting ideas clearly and listening deeply to others. This realization became a cornerstone of his later work. That influence was not a product of shouting, but of careful, deliberate communication. As his senior years approached, Charlie's ambitions grew. He began to consider the possibility of creating something larger than himself, of building an organization or movement guided by ideas he cared about deeply. But he approached this dream cautiously. It was never about rushing or impressing others. It was about planting seeds, nurturing them, and watching them grow over time. He took small steps, writing essays, participating in civic projects, and connecting with like-minded peers, to prepare for the future he imagined. Even outside school, Charlie's curiosity never waned. He spent long afternoons reading biographies, political analyses, and historical accounts, always absorbing the lessons of the past. He was fascinated by the ways individuals could shape events through vision, determination, and thoughtful action. And while he admired bold leaders, he also saw the value of humility, reflection, and careful planning. This combination, ambition tempered by observation, would define much of his early adult life. Family remained a quiet anchor throughout these years. Conversations over dinner often revolved around current events, philosophical questions, and reflections on life. These moments were not dramatic, but they were grounding, teaching him the importance of connection, empathy, and perspective. Charlie learned that leadership was as much about listening as speaking, as much about understanding as directing. By the time he graduated high school, Charlie had accumulated not only knowledge but also a sense of purpose. He understood the power of ideas, the importance of community, and the subtle art of persuasion. And he knew that if he wanted to make a difference, it would require patience, careful planning, and a willingness to face challenges with calm determination. This quiet, reflective beginning set the stage for what was to come. Charlie Kirk's story was not a story of sudden fame or instant recognition. It was a story of steady growth, gentle observation, and the careful cultivation of ideas. As he moved forward into adulthood, the foundations laid in these early years, curiosity, patience, community, and thoughtful engagement, would guide him through the complex world of public discourse and influence. As Charlie transitioned from high school into college, he carried with him a quiet sense of purpose. College was a place of new experiences, wider perspectives, and deeper challenges. He enrolled at Benedictine University, where the academic environment offered a combination of intellectual stimulation and personal growth. For Charlie, these years were not about chasing recognition, but about understanding the world more fully and finding his own voice within it. At Benedictine, he encountered ideas that both challenged and confirmed his beliefs. The campus, like many others, was a microcosm of society, filled with people from diverse backgrounds and with varying perspectives. Charlie approached this environment with the same careful curiosity that had defined his childhood and teenage years. He listened more than he spoke at first, absorbing different viewpoints, and learning to see arguments from multiple angles. It was during these formative college years that Charlie began to feel a stronger pull toward leadership and civic engagement. He recognized that young people were often absent from important conversations about the direction of society, and he began to imagine ways to help fill that gap. He wanted to create spaces where ideas could be shared freely, without fear or hostility, where thoughtful debate could flourish. This vision slowly took shape into a concrete plan. Inspired by his experiences and observations, Charlie began to dream of building an organization that could empower students, promote engagement, and champion ideas he cared deeply about. He wanted it to be rooted in clarity, honesty, and a sense of purpose, rather than flashy slogans or shallow promises. In 2012, while still very young, Charlie co-founded Turning Point USA, a nonprofit organization aimed at educating students about the principles of free markets, limited government, and personal responsibility. The early days were humble and filled with long hours, challenges, and moments of uncertainty. Charlie and his small team worked tirelessly, often juggling the demands of school and the fledgling organization. There were moments of doubt, moments when the weight of responsibility felt heavy, but each small success fueled the quiet determination that had always guided him. The initial efforts of Turning Point USA focused on campus outreach, connecting with students, organizing small events, and encouraging young people to engage thoughtfully with civic issues. Charlie approached this work with the same patience and observation that had marked his earlier life. He listened to students, understood their concerns, and sought to foster dialogue rather than confrontation. It was not about creating division, but about planting seeds of curiosity and understanding. Even as the organization grew, Charlie maintained a grounded approach. He valued integrity and careful planning, understanding that lasting influence could not be rushed. Each conference, each campus visit, each discussion was an opportunity to model thoughtful engagement, showing that leadership could be calm, measured, and respectful. These early experiences shaped not only the organization but also Charlie himself, honing his skills in communication, strategy, and the subtle art of persuasion. During this period, Charlie also faced criticism and skepticism. Not everyone agreed with his ideas or methods, and the scrutiny of being a young leader in the public sphere was intense. Yet he approached these challenges quietly, using them as opportunities to reflect, adapt, and grow. He learned to distinguish between constructive feedback and noise, and to focus on actions that aligned with his long-term vision. This resilience, tempered by calm reflection, would become a defining feature of his career. Beyond organizational work, Charlie's college years were also a time of personal growth. He built friendships, explored interests outside politics, and learned the value of balance. He understood that leadership was not just about ideas, but also about connection, empathy, and self-awareness. These lessons, absorbed in moments of conversation, quiet reflection, and shared experiences, would continue to inform his approach to life and work. As Turning Point USA expanded, Charlie saw the impact of his early efforts. Student chapters began appearing across the country, events gained attention, and the organization became a recognized voice on campuses. Yet through it all, Charlie remained focused on the core principles that had inspired him from the beginning: thoughtful engagement, careful communication, and the quiet belief that ideas, when nurtured patiently, could make a difference. By the end of Chunk 1, we see the picture of a young man shaped by curiosity, reflection, and purpose. From his earliest days in a suburban home, through the thoughtful observation of his teenage years, to the early achievements of his college life and the founding of Turning Point USA, Charlie's story is one of gradual growth and deliberate action. It is a story that reminds us that influence is not born overnight, but cultivated through patience, listening, and careful attention to the world around us. After establishing Turning Point USA during his college years, Charlie Kirk stepped into a world that was both exciting and demanding. The organization he had co-founded was still small, but its reach was slowly growing, and with that growth came responsibility, scrutiny, and opportunity. For Charlie, this period of life was about learning how to lead in a way that was intentional, thoughtful, and true to the principles he valued. In his early 20s, Charlie's days were long and varied. Some mornings were spent planning events, writing speeches, or coordinating with campus chapters. Other days were filled with travel, visiting universities, and connecting with students across the country. Despite the intensity, Charlie approached each day with a sense of calm purpose. He did not rush, and he did not seek recognition. He sought understanding, communication, and meaningful impact. One of the most striking aspects of Charlie's approach was his attention to individual connections. He took time to speak with students personally, listening to their questions, their concerns, and their hopes. He understood that leadership was not a matter of dictating ideas, but of fostering curiosity and empowering others to think critically. These conversations often took place quietly, in lounges or over coffee, far from the cameras and headlines, yet they were some of the most meaningful moments of his early career. As Turning Point USA gained attention, Charlie began to navigate the public spotlight. Interviews, panels, and media appearances became a regular part of life. For someone so young, this could have been overwhelming, but Charlie's early habit of careful observation and reflection served him well. He learned to speak thoughtfully, to anticipate questions, and to maintain composure even in high-pressure situations. Each appearance was an opportunity to communicate clearly and calmly, rather than to chase applause or controversy. During this time, Charlie also faced criticism and opposition. Being a young conservative voice in a largely progressive campus environment meant encountering skepticism, debate, and sometimes outright hostility. Yet rather than reacting impulsively, he approached these challenges as opportunities to refine his ideas and deepen his understanding. He discovered that resilience, combined with patience, was a far more powerful tool than any argument shouted in anger. Amidst the work and the scrutiny, Charlie maintained routines that grounded him. Early mornings were often reserved for reading, reflection, and planning. Evenings might be spent in conversation with colleagues or friends, discussing strategy, philosophy, or the challenges of the day. These moments of quiet reflection were essential, helping him maintain balance in a life that could easily become frenetic. One of the pivotal moments in this stage of his career was the rapid expansion of Turning Point USA's presence on campuses across the United States. Chapters began forming in unexpected places, student leaders emerged, and events drew attention from media outlets and the public alike. Charlie's careful leadership style helped guide this growth without losing the organization's core values. He emphasized that influence should be rooted in clarity, honesty, and engagement, rather than theatrics or polarization. Even as the organization grew, Charlie remained focused on education. He believed deeply in empowering students to think for themselves, to question assumptions, and to engage with ideas critically. Workshops, seminars, and discussion forums became central to his work, and he personally took part in many of them. He understood that meaningful change required patience and dedication, and that true influence was built over time, not overnight. During these years, Charlie also began to refine his public persona. Unlike many young leaders who sought attention for its own sake, he cultivated a style that was calm, reasoned, and approachable. Interviews were thoughtful, speeches were measured, and even social media communication was deliberate. This approach was not calculated for optics. It reflected the same habits of observation, reflection, and intentionality that had guided him since childhood. As Turning Point USA became a recognized voice in student activism, Charlie faced new challenges. Expanding an organization meant dealing with logistics, funding, and differing opinions among team members. Yet he handled these with quiet diligence, often working behind the scenes to mediate conflicts, encourage collaboration, and ensure that the organization remained true to its mission. Leadership, he learned, was often less about dramatic gestures and more about the steady, consistent application of principles. Outside of work, Charlie's personal life was marked by the same introspection and care. He continued to cultivate friendships, engage in hobbies, and maintain routines that supported his well-being. He understood that being an effective leader required balance and that moments of rest, reflection, and human connection were essential to sustaining long-term efforts. By the mid-2010s, Turning Point USA had gained significant momentum. Student chapters were active nationwide, events drew hundreds of attendees, and Charlie's voice became increasingly influential in conservative circles. Yet despite this rising profile, he remained grounded in the principles that had guided him from the beginning: patience, thoughtful engagement, and a commitment to empowering others to think critically. The growth of Turning Point USA also brought opportunities for collaboration with other organizations, media platforms, and influential figures. Charlie approached these opportunities with the same calm, measured style that had defined his early career. He was selective, deliberate, and always focused on ensuring that partnerships aligned with the organization's mission. These collaborations helped expand the reach of Turning Point USA, while also reinforcing Charlie's reputation as a leader who valued substance over spectacle. Charlie Kirk's story reflects a young adult who is both ambitious and measured, growing influence without losing sight of core values. His early 20s were defined by expansion, public engagement, and learning to navigate both success and scrutiny with composure. It is a story of steady progress, quiet reflection, and the patient cultivation of ideas that would shape not only his career but also the lives of countless students across the country. By the late 2010s, Charlie Kirk had settled into a rhythm that was both busy and deliberate. Every day seemed to stretch endlessly, yet in the best possible way. Mornings often began before dawn, when the world was quiet and still. Charlie would sit at his desk with a cup of coffee, the soft hum of the city outside barely audible, and review plans for the day. He read long-form articles, historical essays, and speeches from leaders he admired, letting the words seep in slowly, like a gentle current shaping his thoughts. Travel became a constant in his life. One week he might be in Florida, the next in California, speaking at universities, attending student chapter events, or visiting small towns where Turning Point USA was just starting to gain traction. Each new campus offered stories: the nervous excitement of students preparing their first events, the quiet satisfaction of a successful discussion forum, and even the small frustrations when things didn't go perfectly. Charlie absorbed these moments patiently. He noticed details that others overlooked: the way a student's eyes lit up when they grasped a new idea, or how a calm word of encouragement could calm a group's anxiety. Public attention was now unavoidable. Interviews on television, podcasts, and radio brought both praise and criticism. Some people admired his clarity of thought. Others questioned his motives or challenged his ideas. Charlie had learned early on that public life was a mirror. It reflected everything, both positive and negative, sometimes magnifying the small details. He didn't react impulsively. Instead, he allowed time to filter the noise, thinking carefully before responding. In quiet moments at night, he would replay conversations, interviews, or speeches, reflecting on what had gone well and what could be improved. One of the hallmarks of this period was Charlie's ability to maintain a calm presence even amidst controversy. Campus protests, media scrutiny, and political debates could have easily become overwhelming. Yet he approached each situation methodically. He focused on listening first, understanding second, and speaking third. This patience was not passive. It was an active, deliberate skill honed over years of observing people, situations, and outcomes. He had learned that influence was rarely gained by force. It was cultivated quietly, consistently, and with attention to detail. Turning Point USA itself had grown into a complex organism. Managing dozens of chapters across the country required a delicate balance between guidance and autonomy. Charlie encouraged student leaders to take initiative while providing mentorship behind the scenes. He communicated regularly via calls, emails, and video conferences, offering advice, sharing resources, and gently correcting course when necessary. Leadership, he often reflected, was as much about creating an environment for others to thrive as it was about directing action. Traveling across the country, Charlie became attuned to the subtle differences between communities. He noticed how regional cultures influenced the way students engaged with ideas, how some campuses were brimming with political activity while others were quieter, more introspective. These observations informed his approach, teaching him to adapt without compromising principles. His patience was both practical and philosophical, a recognition that meaningful impact required understanding before action. Even as the organization expanded, Charlie carved out time for reflection and personal growth. He maintained routines: early morning reading, late-night journaling, and quiet walks when schedules allowed. He sometimes revisited the neighborhoods of his youth, finding grounding in familiar streets, family homes, and old schools. These moments reminded him of where he had started and reinforced the values that guided him: curiosity, persistence, and careful engagement with the world. Charlie also learned the importance of mentoring others directly. He would spend hours coaching young leaders, walking them through event planning, discussing policy ideas, or simply listening to their hopes and fears. These mentoring sessions were not hurried. They were slow, deliberate, and focused on nurturing confidence and critical thinking. He believed that the success of the organization depended not only on ideas but also on people, on their growth, resilience, and ability to navigate challenges. By the end of this period, Charlie's story was marked by both achievement and reflection. He had built a national platform, expanded Turning Point USA across countless campuses, and become a recognizable figure in media and politics. Yet, his approach remained rooted in the same quiet principles he had carried since childhood: patience, observation, reflection, and the belief that influence grows best when it is guided by integrity and thoughtfulness. During these years, one of the most notable aspects of Charlie Kirk's life was the balance he struck between public attention and personal reflection. Each event, each interview, and each campus visit became a story unto itself, full of small details that shaped his understanding of leadership and influence. For example, at a university in the Midwest, Charlie remembered arriving to find a group of students nervously preparing for their first Turning Point USA event. Tables were set up with pamphlets, signs, and banners, yet there was a quiet tension in the room. Charlie took his time walking among them, asking gentle questions, listening to their concerns, and sharing anecdotes from his own early experiences. He recalled feeling nervous as a student speaking to peers for the first time, and he wanted to calm the room with patience and encouragement. Slowly, he saw the tension ease, students began laughing softly, and the event proceeded smoothly. This was not the kind of dramatic triumph captured in headlines, but it was meaningful, proof that small, deliberate guidance could have a lasting impact. On the road, travel became a meditation of sorts. Flights, buses, and long drives offered time for contemplation. Charlie often used these quiet hours to read historical biographies, study speeches from leaders of the past, or reflect on recent experiences. He learned to find calm in motion, letting the hum of an airplane engine or the gentle rhythm of a road trip create space for thought. These moments reinforced the importance of preparation, patience, and attention to nuance, lessons that had carried him since childhood. Even public confrontations, which might have rattled a less experienced person, became opportunities for reflection. Campus protests, heated interviews, or social media critiques were analyzed with care. Charlie often revisited these moments quietly, replaying conversations in his mind, considering what went well and what could have been done differently. He understood that growth often came from discomfort, and that setbacks were simply another form of education. Charlie's daily life was a careful orchestration of work, reflection, and personal routines. Mornings often began before the sun rose, a cup of coffee in hand, as he reviewed plans, read articles, and jotted down ideas in a journal. Afternoons were frequently filled with meetings, calls, and speaking engagements. Evenings, whenever possible, were reserved for quiet reflection, reading, or walking through neighborhoods reminiscent of his youth. These walks were not hurried, they were gentle, mindful steps that allowed his mind to wander and settle, a calm counterbalance to the intensity of his professional life. Mentorship was another defining feature of this period. Charlie spent hours each week coaching young student leaders. He would sit with them, sometimes in small coffee shops, sometimes in quiet offices, listening to their stories and questions. He shared lessons from his own experiences, the importance of preparation, the value of listening, the necessity of patience, and the quiet power of consistency. These sessions were rarely about making headlines. They were about planting seeds of thought, nurturing confidence, and creating leaders who could carry forward ideas with integrity. Even as Turning Point USA grew, Charlie maintained a commitment to education and dialogue. Workshops, seminars, and discussion panels became integral parts of the organization's programming. He encouraged open conversations, gently steering debates so that students could engage thoughtfully rather than merely argue for the sake of argument. It was a delicate balance, one that required patience, empathy, and careful observation. The media spotlight, which had grown steadily, brought both opportunities and pressures. Interviews, podcasts, and televised appearances required preparation, clarity, and composure. Charlie treated each one as a chance to communicate not just ideas, but a way of thinking, a model of calm, reasoned engagement. Even moments of criticism were approached with reflection rather than reaction. In quiet hotel rooms or backstage areas, he would review the day's interactions, considering how best to grow from them and how to guide others in the organization. There were also personal moments tucked into these years. Long walks through city streets, quiet dinners with friends, and occasional visits home. These times were slower, gentler, and deeply grounding. Charlie often revisited childhood memories during these moments. Conversations with parents, lessons learned in high school, and the small triumphs and failures that had shaped him. These reflections were calming, almost meditative, reminding him of the continuity of life and the importance of staying grounded amidst rising influence. By the end of the late 2010s, Charlie's life had become a careful rhythm of growth, reflection, and influence. He had built an organization with national reach, guided thousands of students, and become a recognizable voice in political discourse. Yet despite the expansion, he remained tethered to the values that had guided him since youth: patience, thoughtful engagement, and the quiet cultivation of ideas. Leadership, he realized, was rarely loud or dramatic. It was measured, persistent, and attentive to the small details that ultimately shaped larger outcomes. One of the most vivid memories from this period involved a large Turning Point USA conference in a major city. The event hall was buzzing with energy, yet there was a quiet undertone of nervous anticipation among student leaders. Charlie arrived early, before the crowd, walking slowly through the rows of chairs and tables, taking note of the banners, the signage, and the subtle details that could make the day flow smoothly. He paused to speak with individual students, asking about their expectations, concerns, and hopes for the day. There was a gentle rhythm to his movements, a calm attentiveness that seemed to reassure those around him. The conference itself stretched over several hours, filled with workshops, speeches, and panels. Charlie's role was not just to speak, but to guide, observe, and respond to the needs of the students. He moved quietly from session to session, offering feedback, encouragement, and thoughtful questions. Some students struggled with nerves, others with logistics, but Charlie's presence was consistently calm and steady. By the end of the day, laughter and soft applause filled the room, not the loud fanfare of entertainment, but the quiet satisfaction of accomplishment. For Charlie, these moments were more meaningful than headlines or media mentions. They represented the slow, careful cultivation of ideas in young minds. Media appearances during this period were similarly demanding. Television interviews, podcasts, and online discussions required preparation and composure. Charlie approached each with a quiet focus, reviewing key points in advance and anticipating challenging questions. When criticism arose, sometimes sharp, sometimes personal, he treated it as an opportunity for reflection rather than reaction. He often revisited interviews in the quiet of hotel rooms, noting where he could clarify points, deepen explanations, or approach situations differently next time. These reflective habits became central to his development as a communicator and leader. Travel remained a constant in Charlie's life. Long flights, train rides, and car trips offered both logistical necessity and personal reflection. He would read extensively during these times, often biographies, historical accounts, or essays on leadership. The rhythm of motion, planes climbing through clouds, trains gliding along tracks, highways stretching endlessly, provided a soothing backdrop for thought. He reflected on past successes and failures, on small decisions that had ripple effects, and on the countless students whose lives he had touched through Turning Point USA. Amid these professional demands, Charlie also maintained personal routines that grounded him. Early mornings were often spent in quiet reading or journaling, and evenings, when schedules permitted, involved long walks or time with friends. He cherished these moments of calm, recognizing their role in sustaining clarity of thought and emotional balance. Even in the midst of a high-profile career, these small routines were a form of meditation, a gentle rhythm that reminded him of continuity and purpose. Staff and organizational challenges also shaped this period. With dozens of chapters and hundreds of student leaders, issues naturally arose. Disagreements over strategies, differing interpretations of messaging, or logistical hurdles. Charlie approached these challenges methodically, listening first, understanding the concerns of others, and then offering guidance. His leadership style emphasized patience and collaboration. Rather than issuing directives from above, he preferred to nurture solutions, helping student leaders develop confidence and problem-solving skills. These moments were slow and deliberate, requiring attentiveness, empathy, and careful judgment. Another quiet aspect of this period involved mentorship beyond Turning Point USA. Charlie often corresponded with young leaders and peers who sought advice on public speaking, leadership, and personal development. These exchanges were calm, measured, and reflective, emphasizing the importance of preparation, patience, and self-awareness. He encouraged mentees to focus not on immediate recognition, but on consistent effort, thoughtful communication, and steady growth over time. Despite the intensity of travel, media, and organizational work, Charlie carved out time for reflection on a broader scale. Late nights often found him revisiting childhood memories, quietly considering lessons learned from family, school, and early experiences. He reflected on the teachers, mentors, and peers who had shaped him, and he considered the impact of his work on others. These moments of introspection were unhurried, almost meditative, allowing him to process the pressures of public life while remaining grounded. By the end of this period, Charlie Kirk had become a figure of both recognition and contemplation. He was known publicly as a dynamic young leader, yet privately he maintained a steady focus on principles, preparation, and careful engagement. His story during these years was not about sudden triumphs, but about slow, deliberate progress, continuous learning, and the quiet cultivation of influence. Even small moments held significance. A simple lunch with student leaders, a casual conversation backstage before a conference speech, or a reflective walk through a city street could provide insights that shaped future decisions. Charlie had learned that leadership often manifests in subtle, unseen ways, and that influence is nurtured as much in quiet moments as in public statements. These years also brought lessons in humility. Public visibility meant that mistakes were visible, critiques were public, and every action was subject to interpretation. Charlie approached these realities with calm reflection. He considered each challenge carefully, sought advice from trusted mentors, and used every experience, success or failure, as an opportunity to grow. This balance of action and reflection became central to his approach, reinforcing the idea that meaningful leadership requires both courage and patience. By the conclusion of Chunk 3, Charlie's story illustrates the combination of national influence, personal reflection, and deliberate leadership. From the nervous students he guided at his first major conferences to the quiet late-night reflections that informed his decisions, his journey is a testament to steady growth, careful attention to detail, and the patient cultivation of ideas. The chapter of his life in his mid to late 20s closes with a sense of calm purpose, setting the stage for the next phase: mature leadership, broader national milestones, and the ongoing development of both character and influence. As Charlie Kirk entered his late 20s, his life had taken on a rhythm that was both intense and purposeful. Turning Point USA had grown from a small college initiative into a nationally recognized organization, with chapters in hundreds of universities, a growing team of student leaders, and a presence that reached far beyond campuses. Yet amidst the growth, Charlie maintained the calm, reflective approach that had defined his journey from childhood curiosity to young leadership. Daily routines remained a grounding force. Early mornings were often quiet, with Charlie reviewing messages, reading thoughtful essays, or journaling reflections from the previous day. He would sometimes walk slowly through his neighborhood before the world had fully awakened, savoring the calm and letting his mind wander gently over ideas, plans, and memories. This slow rhythm provided space for clarity and calm thinking, which he relied upon to navigate the complexities of public life. Major milestones continued to mark his career. National conferences drew larger audiences than ever before, and Charlie found himself speaking in front of hundreds, sometimes thousands, of students and supporters. Yet even in these high-profile settings, he remained attentive to small details. A nervous student in the front row, a question that required thoughtful clarification, or a subtle logistical adjustment that would make the event smoother. For him, leadership was not measured by applause or recognition, but by the steady cultivation of understanding, curiosity, and confidence in others. Media attention grew simultaneously. Television appearances, podcasts, and online interviews brought both opportunity and scrutiny. Charlie approached each with preparation and calm. He reviewed talking points carefully, anticipated challenging questions, and focused on communicating ideas clearly rather than theatrically. Criticism, often inevitable, was met with reflection. In quiet hotel rooms or late-night flights, He would review statements, consider feedback, and think about how to better convey his message. These routines reinforced his commitment to deliberate, thoughtful engagement. As Turning Point USA matured, Charlie's role expanded from day-to-day logistics to strategic guidance and mentoring. He spent considerable time working directly with student leaders, coaching them on communication, event planning, and the nuances of advocacy. These moments were slow and intentional, emphasizing patience, understanding, and careful growth. Charlie had learned that influence was not a product of charisma alone, but of consistency, thoughtfulness, and the ability to foster confidence in others. Even with growing responsibilities, Charlie prioritized reflection. He often revisited memories from his youth, the quiet afternoons reading history, the early experiences in debate clubs, and the small volunteer projects that had first taught him the power of action. These reflections were calming and grounding, reminding him of his roots and the lessons that had shaped him. In these moments, he connected the past with the present, seeing continuity in his journey and the slow unfolding of purpose over time. Challenges continued to emerge, as they always do in public life. Critics, controversies, and disagreements were part of the landscape. Yet Charlie's approach remained consistent: observe carefully, reflect calmly, and respond thoughtfully. He had learned that patience was not passive. It was an active skill, allowing time to consider consequences, weigh perspectives, and act with integrity. Mistakes were treated as lessons, setbacks as opportunities for growth, and successes as reminders of the value of persistence and preparation. Amid professional demands, Charlie also carved out moments of personal grounding. He found comfort in quiet walks, reading, and time with close friends. He occasionally revisited the streets of his childhood neighborhood, reflecting on how far he had come and the values that had guided him. These slow, introspective moments provided balance, reminding him that influence and achievement were meaningful only when coupled with self-awareness and care. During this period, Charlie also reflected on leadership in broader terms. He considered the responsibility of guiding young people, shaping conversations, and influencing public discourse. Leadership, he realized, was not about immediate accolades or dramatic gestures, but about the quiet, persistent cultivation of understanding and confidence. It required listening as much as speaking, patience as much as action, and humility alongside ambition. These reflections were gentle, almost meditative, and they informed his daily approach to work, mentorship, and public engagement. Turning Point USA continued to thrive under his guidance. Student chapters became increasingly self-sufficient, conferences grew in sophistication, and the organization's reputation solidified. Charlie's calm, deliberate leadership style ensured that growth was steady and sustainable. He valued consistency over flashiness, education over spectacle, and empowerment over authority. The organization's expansion was a reflection not only of his ideas, but of his careful cultivation of people, processes, and principles. By the early 2020s, Charlie had established a pattern of life that balanced influence, reflection, and quiet routines. His story had evolved from a curious child exploring the world of ideas, to a teenage observer developing confidence, to a young adult building a national organization, and now to a leader balancing national influence with personal reflection and mentorship. Each stage had built upon the last, forming a narrative of steady growth, deliberate action, and thoughtful engagement. In quieter moments, Charlie would reflect on the broader lessons of his journey: the importance of patience, the power of listening, the subtle impact of small, consistent actions, and the enduring value of curiosity and integrity. He understood that life and leadership were processes, not destinations. Influence was cultivated slowly, relationships required care, and knowledge was best paired with reflection. These gentle insights formed the backbone of his current approach, allowing him to navigate challenges and opportunities with calm assurance. As Chunk 4 draws to a close, the story of Charlie Kirk illustrates a journey of thoughtful growth, measured influence, and steady reflection. From his early days in suburban Chicago to his role as a national leader, The path has been marked by curiosity, patience, and careful engagement with the world. Leadership, as Charlie's story reveals, is less about speed or spectacle, and more about consistency, quiet reflection, and the patient cultivation of understanding in oneself and others. As the calendar turned to 2025, Charlie Kirk found himself in a season of reflection and purpose. The whirlwind of national tours, media appearances, and organizational growth had settled into a rhythm that allowed for deeper engagement with the causes he held dear. Turning Point USA had matured into a robust platform for young conservatives, and Charlie's role had evolved from founder to mentor, guiding the next generation with a steady hand. In the quieter moments of his day, Charlie often found solace in the simple act of reading. Books on philosophy, history, and leadership filled his shelves, each offering insights that he would later share with his audience. These readings were not just for personal growth but were woven into the fabric of his speeches and discussions, enriching the dialogue with depth and perspective. Travel remained a constant in his life, but it had taken on a more purposeful tone. Each trip was an opportunity to connect with students, to listen to their concerns, and to offer guidance. The long hours on planes and in hotel rooms were filled with preparation and contemplation. He would often take walks in the early morning hours, allowing the solitude to clear his mind and focus his thoughts. The events he hosted continued to draw large crowds, but it was the intimate conversations that left a lasting impact. After each speech, he would linger, engaging with attendees, answering questions, and offering encouragement. These interactions were the heartbeat of his mission, reminding him of the importance of personal connection in a world that often felt increasingly divided. Despite the challenges that came with his public role, Charlie remained grounded. He maintained close relationships with family and friends, finding comfort in their unwavering support. These personal connections were his anchor, providing a sense of normalcy amidst the demands of his career. As the summer of 2025 approached, Charlie was preparing for what he anticipated would be another impactful season of the American Comeback Tour. The schedule was demanding, but he embraced it with enthusiasm, eager to continue his work and to inspire others. On September 10, 2025, Charlie Kirk was scheduled to speak at Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah, as part of the tour. The event was set to begin at 12 p.m. Mountain Daylight Saving Time, and Charlie arrived early to ensure everything was in place. He took time to speak with the event organizers and to familiarize himself with the layout, as he always did before a speaking engagement. The crowd began to gather, and Charlie stood backstage, taking a moment to appreciate the energy and anticipation that filled the air. He reflected on the journey that had brought him to this point and felt a deep sense of gratitude for the opportunity to engage with so many young minds. As he stepped onto the stage, the familiar rush of adrenaline accompanied him. He began his address, engaging with the audience, discussing topics that were both timely and thought-provoking. The dialogue was spirited, and Charlie was in his element, navigating the conversation with his characteristic blend of wit and insight. Then, in an instant, everything changed. A single shot rang out, and Charlie fell. The audience was thrown into chaos as security personnel rushed to the stage. Emergency responders arrived swiftly, but despite their efforts, Charlie was pronounced dead later that afternoon at a nearby hospital. The news spread quickly, and the nation was left in shock. The loss of Charlie Kirk was felt deeply across the political spectrum. Tributes poured in from friends, colleagues, and even those who had disagreed with him, all acknowledging the impact he had made on public discourse. In the days that followed, the investigation into the assassination unfolded. Tyler Robinson, a 22-year-old from Washington, Utah, was arrested and charged with aggravated murder. Prosecutors announced plans to seek the death penalty, citing political motivations for the attack. The memorial service held on September 21 at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona, drew over 90,000 attendees. It was a somber occasion, filled with tributes and reflections on Charlie's life and legacy. His widow, Erica Kirk, delivered a moving speech, emphasizing the importance of forgiveness and unity in the face of tragedy. As the nation mourned, Charlie's influence continued to resonate. The organization he founded, Turning Point USA, carried on his mission, adapting to the changing political landscape while staying true to the principles he championed. His legacy lived on in the countless individuals he inspired, in the conversations he sparked, and in the enduring impact of his work. In the quiet moments of reflection, Charlie Kirk's final year serves as a testament to a life lived with purpose, passion, and a commitment to making a difference. His story is one of resilience, of standing firm in one's beliefs, and of the profound impact one individual can have on the world. As we come to the gentle close of Charlie Kirk's story, let us pause for a moment and breathe in the quiet rhythm of a life that, though marked by public attention and achievement, was also full of small, meaningful moments that often went unseen. Think of the early mornings when the world was still hushed and calm, and Charlie would walk slowly, letting the soft light of dawn wash over streets that held memories of his youth. Imagine the gentle rustle of leaves, the distant hum of a waking city, and the quiet moments of reflection that shaped his thoughts before the day began in earnest. His journey reminds us that leadership, influence, and purpose are not always loud or immediate. They are cultivated slowly, with patience, care, and attention to small details that may seem insignificant at the time, but over months and years, quietly grow into something meaningful. Every conversation he had with a student, every word he spoke at a conference, every gentle correction or piece of advice offered in private, it all added up. Like ripples across water, these small acts carried forward, touching lives in ways that can rarely be fully measured, yet resonate deeply. Consider the long journeys, the flights across cities, the moments of travel when the world seemed to move at a steady, calming rhythm outside the window. These were times when he could think, read, reflect, and prepare, times that, though brief, were woven into the fabric of his life. Picture him reading quietly, absorbed in stories of history, philosophy, and leadership, letting the words sink in slowly, teaching him lessons that would later guide others. Imagine the peaceful solitude of those late-night hotel rooms or early morning walks, where even amidst the demands of a busy public life, he found moments to pause, to breathe, to center himself. And think of the connections he nurtured, students who approached him nervously, unsure of themselves, and left with a spark of confidence, a small reminder that their voice mattered. Friends and family who stood beside him, grounding him amidst the whirlwind of attention and responsibility. These were the unseen threads of his story, the quiet forces that sustained him, and the gentle reminders that even in public life, the personal, tender moments matter most. Even in the face of challenges, criticism, and the unpredictability of public attention, there is a lesson in his calm persistence. Life, much like a story read slowly at night, does not demand immediate answers. It unfolds gradually, in patterns, rhythms, and pauses that allow reflection, understanding, and growth. We can learn from the way he faced obstacles, not with haste or anger, but with measured thought, patience, and a quiet focus on what truly mattered. As you listen to these words, let yourself sink into the gentle awareness of time passing slowly. Let the cadence of this story guide your breath. Inhale calmly, exhale softly. Picture the life of a person shaped by curiosity, courage, reflection, and a commitment to others. Imagine the soft light of late afternoon spilling across a quiet room, the distant chirping of birds, the faint rustle of wind in the trees outside. Let your mind wander gently through the narrative, noticing small details, savoring quiet moments, and allowing yourself to relax fully. Charlie Kirk's story, with its triumphs and challenges, its public moments and private reflections, serves as a reminder of the power of thoughtful engagement, of calm persistence, and of the quiet but meaningful ways a life can leave a lasting impact. And as we let this tale settle, we too can feel the calm rhythm of a story coming to rest. Let it remind us that every life, every story, every day, unfolds slowly, in its own time. And in that unfolding, there is beauty, there is meaning, and there is peace. Now, close your eyes fully. Feel the weight of the day release from your body. Imagine the soft rhythm of a slow, deep breath, matching the gentle rhythm of this story. Let your thoughts drift like clouds across a quiet sky, carrying you toward rest. And know, as you do, that every quiet moment, every gentle reflection, every slow, thoughtful pause is a part of the story of your own life, and it, too, is meaningful. Rest now, sleep now, and let the calm, steady pulse of life, reflection, and quiet understanding carry you gently into dreams, as this story softly fades into the night. Good night.